open and transparent trading deal and cutting EU red tape. Europe needs reform.
One of the reports I've been involved with in the European Parliament recently in particular has been this one, which is called Learning EU in Schools. It's been a particularly important topic to me, and one that I think has engaged a lot of interest in the United Kingdom in particular. And the reasons for that are that the report seeks to make use of the treaties, particularly the Lisbon Treaty, to involve themselves in educational matters and what to teach about the EU in secondary schools in the member states of the EU. I and many others find that an unacceptable level of interference within member state competencies, but I think it's important to underline how European Parliament reports quite often make use of the treaties to come up with reasons or excuses, if you like, to involve themselves in areas that we in many member states had considered were not part of the European Union governance arrangements. I found it particularly interesting that a number of members who were seriously involved in this report did not get called to speak in the debate in Parliament about it. And I also found it interesting that the Commission made no reference to the fact that this wasn't a competence of the European Union, but actually seemed to be very enthusiastic about this report and agreed with parliamentarians away from the ECR group who wished to take this report and use it as a way to get this sort of information into schools across the EU. Now, the issue is not principally that the institutions and the involvement in the EU in our daily lives needs to be taught about. I think that's quite useful and important. It doesn't necessarily need a European parliamentary report. However, I'm quite relaxed about the fact that these subjects should be taught within schools. But the report makes very heavy weather of the fact that a positive vision of the EU should be taught in schools to counteract Euroscepticism, and seems to suggest that people having a sceptical view of the European Union is somehow wrong and needs EU action to counteract. Now, that runs quite contrary to the views I have and many people have in the UK, that education should be about people reaching their own views about subjects, coming to their own opinion about things, and not being spoon-fed ideological or propaganda opinions. Unfortunately, despite the fact that the ECR group was resolutely against this report, it was passed by a very large majority, and I now see it as my responsibility and that of other ECR members to ensure that this sort of material doesn't find its way into schools in this unsavoury propaganda type way, but that schools are free to choose for themselves what's best for their pupils and how best they come to an understanding of the responsibilities of young people as citizens in their own member states.